I think this team deserves the opportunity to get in the playoff by what they've been able to accomplish and what they've been able to do. Certainly not maybe in this game, but I think the team we play tonight is a very good football team and probably one of the best teams in the country. They've won 11 games. Not very many teams are able to do that. And I really don't know what all the scenarios might be where we would have an opportunity to do it. I'd certainly like to see this team get the opportunity to do it, and I think they deserve it.
Nick Saban's comments following Alabama's 26-14 loss to Auburn on Saturday. Auburn moves to 10-2. Alabama now 11-1. You're listening to Kyle Henderson on the BamaInsider.com podcast here on Sunday, November 26th. Walk you off the ledge a little bit and tell you that there are some positives to take away from this game. And Alabama, far from being out of the college football playoff rankings, and we'll talk a little bit about that and talk about some scenarios to watch for this coming Saturday. I know Alabama, they're not in the SEC championship, but that doesn't eliminate them from the playoff picture. The next playoff rankings will be decided on Tuesday, November 28th, and we still have one more week of college football with the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12. All those have conference championship games this next Saturday, and that's going to play a major role into the playoff picture for Alabama football. Let's talk about the scoring drive, the scoring summary between these two teams last night. And we opened the game with a Nate Craigmire 3-yard touchdown pass to Kerryon Johnson, which made it Auburn 7, Alabama 0. The scoring drive was an impressive 12-play, 95 yards, and lasted 4 minutes and 54 seconds. Alabama then got on the board in the second quarter when Jalen Hurts hooked up with Jerry Jeudy for a 36-yard touchdown pass. 7 plays, 60 yards, lasted 3 minutes and 26 seconds. The game was tied 7-7 until Daniel Carlson hit a 33-yard field goal as time expired in the second quarter to make it 10-7 Auburn at halftime. Now in the third quarter, Alabama jumped to a 14-10 lead when Bo Scarborough busted off a 21-yard run off a 5-play, 79-yard drive to give Alabama a 14-10 lead. Daniel Carlson then hit a 44-yard field goal to make it 14-13 Alabama with 10-12 in the third quarter. Auburn would then take a lead 20-14 when Kerryon Johnson scored from 1 yard out. The drive was 12 plays, 69 yards, and lasted 5 minutes and 6 seconds. And then in the fourth quarter, Jarrett Stidham, Auburn's quarterback, reeled off a 16-yard touchdown run to make it 26-14. Alabama actually tried one last time in the final seconds of the game when Jalen Hurts hooked up with Cam Sims. However, the play did not result in a touchdown to make it a final 26-14. So what does it mean for Alabama going forward? I mean, is Alabama out of the playoffs? Now, they're not out. They're probably out of the top 4 right now, especially on these next rankings. But they lost. Alabama lost to a very, very good Auburn football team. I mean, Auburn playing through the roof right now, coming off a big win over Georgia, and now they beat Alabama. So I think Auburn is playing some of the best football in the entire country. Alabama has still won 11 games. And as you know, one loss doesn't necessarily mean you're out of the college football playoffs. And we'll talk a little bit about the scenarios here coming up, what it means for Alabama moving forward. But Auburn still has to take care of business next Saturday against Georgia. That's a team they beat earlier in the season. Those two teams will rematch. It's tough to beat any team twice, especially in college football. However, if Auburn does win that game, I think it does bode well for Alabama because, they're probably going to take Auburn. I mean, Auburn, obviously. The SEC champ is automatically going to the tournament. I mean, we know that. But I think it bodes well if Auburn beats Georgia and then Auburn's is Alabama's only loss. So keep tabs on that. One thing I noticed about this Alabama football team, and it's been something that has happened all season long, is Alabama does not let one of their running backs get into a rhythm. As we look at the stats last night, Damian Harris, 6 carries, 51 yards. Bo Scarborough, 6 carries, 46 yards. Josh Jacobs, 6 carries, 25 yards. I mean, are they trying to keep these running backs healthy, fresh, happy? I mean, what's a thought process, I guess, for Brian Dable, the first-year offensive coordinator for Alabama? Why continue to get these backs and rotate them so frequently? It's incredible. I mean, for example, look at Auburn's running back, Kerryon Johnson, last night. 30 carries, 104 yards. You have to put the ball in the running back's hand who's filling it. Alabama obviously has 5 running backs on their roster. Any of them can do damage. Any of them. But they continue, and it's interesting because, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but let's say Damian Harris looks good. Let's say he looks hot. They take him out, and they put Bo Scarborough in, who looks slow. Then they put Josh Jacobs in, and you're like, oh, Josh Jacobs, he's on fire. Give him the football. And then the next play, it's Bo Scarborough again. Then it's Damian Harris. So it's like, I really don't get the rotation of the running backs. I think it's been a problem for Alabama. Sure, these guys are healthy, but at the same point, like, you got to put the football in the hands of your best guy, especially when he's feeling it. The play overall of Jalen Hurts last night, it wasn't stellar. 13 of 23 for 177 yards, 1 touchdown, had a fumble. There was a couple key miscommunications there in the fourth quarter. I think at that point they were just completely rattled, and it wasn't their game. I think Jalen failed to hit on some deep passes. I think he failed to see some open receivers that possibly could have just been touchdowns. But at the same point, I mean, Jalen, did what he's going to do. I mean, he did what he's been doing all season. He ran the football 17 times for 80 yards. He still had 177 yards passing. He threw that 36-yard touchdown to Jerry Jeudy. I think overall it came down to just that Auburn had a great game plan. And props to Auburn's quarterback, Jarrett Stidham. I mean, kid's a stud. Last night, 21 for 28, 237 yards passing. Had a touchdown run from 16 yards out. I think Auburn's defensive line, my goodness, those guys were ferocious. I mean, across the board, Auburn was the better football team last night, and I think Auburn is playing through the roof. Certainly a top 5 in college football, probably a top 2. I mean, who's better than them? I guess, right? Clemson. Clemson beat Auburn 14-6 early in the year, so you could argue that Clemson, then Auburn, then Oklahoma, Wisconsin, they're still undefeated. People don't want to talk about Wisconsin for whatever reason. I know schedule, blah, 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 but I mean, they've won 12 games. They're the only team in college football to win 12 games this season. And guess how many they've lost? 0. So, I think as we look forward to the college football playoff picture, you got to look at these are some scenarios to look at. So this coming Saturday, I'm going to bring this up on my computer so I can read it to you clearly. So this coming Saturday, these are the conference championships that are taking place. In the SEC championship, you have Auburn 10-2 taking on Georgia 11-1. All these games are Saturday, December 2nd. Now, if Auburn wins this game, Auburn is in, right? So what does it mean for Alabama? Well, a lot depends on the Big 12 championship, which is between Oklahoma and TCU. Now, if Oklahoma wins that game, Oklahoma's in, okay? So then we look at the Big 10 championship game, Ohio State versus Wisconsin. Now, if Ohio State beats an undefeated Wisconsin, that's going to mean more than likely that Ohio State and Alabama are the final 2 teams that the committee is looking at. Now, does the committee take Ohio State, which would won 11-2 in a Big 10 championship, over a 1-loss Alabama team who doesn't have a conference championship? Because the 4th team that's going to get in is the ACC champ, and that's going to be Clemson or Miami, which is also Saturday, December 2nd. So let's just throw out a hypothetical right now. Auburn wins. Auburn's in at 11-2. Big 12 championship. Oklahoma beats TCU. They're in at 12-1. Big 10 championship. Ohio State beats Wisconsin. Ohio State would then be 11-2. There's your 3 teams. And the ACC championship would be Clemson and Miami, which would be your 4th team. Now, before Ohio State is penciled in, it's going to come down to Ohio State, who has an ugly 31-point loss to Iowa, but they do have a Big 12 championship, and they did just beat an undefeated Wisconsin. Does Alabama, who lost to Auburn, who's playing through the roof, are they knocked out because they lost to Auburn by 2 touchdowns? I think that's what it's going to come down to. So if you are an Alabama fan and you are watching this coming weekend's college football conference championships, you are rooting for TCU to beat Oklahoma, because I think that would knock out Oklahoma, and you are rooting for Ohio State to beat Wisconsin. Worst case scenarios for Alabama fans would be Oklahoma and Wisconsin winning this coming Saturday. I think that would knock Alabama out of the 4-team playoff, and that would be that. And Alabama would likely still go to the New Year's 6 game. I mean, I could potentially see them playing. Depending on who's kind of left on the table, they're going to be in one of those games in the New Year's 6. But actually, I think CBS had some bowl projections this morning, and they actually had Alabama playing in, I think it's the Orange Bowl against Miami. So a lot to talk about, a lot of scenarios to go through. Here's some more Nick Saban following Alabama's 26-14 loss to Auburn on Saturday.
Very proud of what this team has been able to accomplish this year and winning 11 games. I don't think we played our best game today, but you got to give a lot of credit to Auburn. They played very well. I think one of the biggest differences in the game was third down. We could not get off the field on third down. That allowed them to extend drives and led to several scoring opportunities for them. We didn't do a very good job on third down, so we didn't sustain drives because of that, and that affects time of possession and a whole lot of other things. So that was probably the biggest difference in the game. This team has overcome a lot of adversity this year, and I'm very pleased and proud of the way they performed all year long. I don't think we played our best today, and I'm certainly responsible for that, and I think all of us in the organization will learn from what we can do better in the future. So I don't think one game defines who you are. It certainly doesn't define this team for who they are, and again, I'm very proud of what they were able to accomplish. I'm sorry that I could not do a better job as a coach and a leader to help them play better in this game so they would have an opportunity to play in the SEC championship game.
Questions? What went wrong on some of those crossing patterns on some of those third downs? What do you see?
I really don't know what crossing patterns you're talking about. You're talking about us guarding them?
Yes.
They were in a stack, and we didn't have a rat in a hole to cut the guy because we were trying to 5-man rush, and 23 did a great job with his quickness getting away from us and outrunning us across the field. So we changed the way we played those later in the second half, and it helped a little bit. We didn't get a lot of pressure. We didn't affect the quarterback, and the ball got out of his hand quickly because of the kind of routes that they ran, and we didn't do a good job of covering them.
Were you guys surprised how much they ran Jared Stidham?
Well, we knew he was very athletic, and we certainly respected him as a runner. That's not something that they've done a lot, but we did respect his ability to scramble and extend plays. He did make a couple really, good runs. He pulled the ball, and when Hootie got hurt, got cut on the zone option and ran a quarterback draw for a big first down. So we have a lot of respect for the guy. He's really, really a good player. Best quarterback we played against all year.
What happened on the consecutive snaps that got away to the low snaps or early snaps?
Well, we were going on the clap, and Bo said he heard somebody clap, whether it was one of their players or whether one of our players. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. And then the second time, Bo clapped to try to get the line's attention to find out who the mic was. We weren't even set on the play. I thought they should have called illegal procedure on us. But 2 miscommunications because you're going on silent count. We could have made a change and did a different kind of silent count, which used the leg lift instead of the clap. But very unfortunate, crucial situation in the game where we had a chance to get back in the game.
So you think Jalen played tonight?
Excuse me?
You think Jalen played today?
Well, I think Jalen really competed in the game. He made a lot of plays in the game. He scrambled a lot with his feet. We just didn't do a good enough job in the passing game. But that's not just Jalen. We didn't have good enough protection. We didn't have guys getting open. Maybe we needed to have better design in what we did. And he probably could have done a little better job of reading some things.
Was crowd noise a big factor?
Well, we knew the crowd noise would be what the crowd noise was. When you play on the road in this league, it's always that way. You have to go on silent on offense, which is a little more difficult for the offensive players. We practice it. We've played in it many times before. They had a very enthusiastic crowd, but I don't think the decibels matter after it gets so loud. You can't hear anyway. So, and we've dealt with that several times this season. We didn't.
Talk about your chances to get in the playoff.
Excuse me?
You talk about your chances to get in the playoff.
You know, I think this team deserves the opportunity to get in the playoff by what they've been able to accomplish and what they've been able to do. Certainly not maybe in this game, but I think the team we play tonight is a very good football team and probably one of the best teams in the country. They've won 11 games. Not very many teams are able to do that. And I really don't know what all the scenarios might be where we would have an opportunity to do it. I'd certainly like to see this team get the opportunity to do it, and I think they deserve it.
So there you have it. Nick Saban believes that Alabama deserves a shot at the college football playoffs. In my opinion, I think Alabama does as well. I mean, look at the amount of injuries Alabama has dealt with this season, and they still managed to win 11 games. Their marquee victories are against Mississippi State and LSU. Those are very good victories to look back on. They won that Mississippi State game on the road. They had injuries that they had to deal with. Overall, this season, Alabama was the number one team. Every single week, they were the team that teams wanted to be. Their only loss is to Auburn. Auburn is a 10-win team. Auburn beat a previously undefeated Georgia when Georgia climbed to number one. So Auburn has beaten 2 number ones this season. That's a very good Auburn football team. Gus Malzahn has done a fantastic job, and no one is playing better football than Auburn. So you can't take too much away from Alabama's loss to Auburn on the road. I mean, look what happened to number 2 Miami. They go and lose to an unranked Pittsburgh team. I mean, you can't compare those two losses. Alabama's still very much alive in the college football playoff rankings. This is still a very good football team. Terrell Lewis is back. Christian Miller is back. Mac Wilson is back. Give this team time. 3 weeks to prepare for the college football playoff rankings, and I don't think anybody is going to want to have Alabama on their side of the playoff bracket. In my prediction, I think it goes like this. In the end, I think it's going to be number 1, Clemson. I think it's going to be number 2, Oklahoma. I think it's going to be number 3, Auburn. And I think Ohio State beats Wisconsin. And I think it comes down to Ohio State and Alabama. And I think the committee puts Alabama in over Ohio State, which would put Alabama in at the number 4 spot. And I think Clemson and I think Alabama will have a date in New Orleans on New Year's. So that's my prediction, and I think Oklahoma and Auburn will be playing in Pasadena. So that's my prediction. We'll see if it comes true. A lot of college football left to be played. Don't count this Alabama football team out. The Crimson Tide still alive. They took a punch. They're going to get back up. Sometimes it takes a loss to really propel this team to where they needs to go. In the past, as you know, Alabama has still won the national championship game with losing a game. So don't write off your Crimson Tide. Believe in them. They're coming. You got Nick Saban. You got Jalen Hurts. You got Rashaan Evans and Minkah Fitzpatrick. This team is too good to be done. The committee's going to know that. So don't write off your Crimson Tide. Coming to you from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama on Sunday, November 26th. This is Kyle Henderson of the BamaInsider.com podcast.